Thank you very much. Please, a warm round of applause for the Black Nativity musicians. And to Darius Wilrich, who performed our prelude this afternoon. Please, a warm round of applause for Darius. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Lori Matsukawa from King 5 News, and I'd like to welcome you all, especially the students, as we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to reconnect with his vision for our society. We're living in a time of unbelievable changes, some of them good, some of them not so good. As you know, this is the 25th year that we as a nation are celebrating the Martin Luther King holiday. But King County, Washington has been having this particular program for 37 years. We were way ahead of the curve. This annual program is a compass, a center point, something we can rely on and count on to renew our spirits every time. We would like to thank the Seattle Community Colleges for inviting us here, and of course to Mount Zion Baptist Church for hosting us this year again. And I'd also like to do a quick shout out to the volunteer law enforcers who are volunteering their time to be here. This is very important to us, especially in light of the tragic and sad events that happened in Tucson. We appreciate the volunteer law enforcers who are here today. We cannot, of course, have a celebration like this unless we have music. And for that, we can thank the Black Nativity Choir. They make every holiday season special at the Black Nativity Theater performances, and they say just a little bit of their oomph to share with us today. Directing their performance today is Josephine Howell and Patronelle Wright. Now, some of you have these Martin Luther King Jr. pins as you walked in. I want you to promise me you're going to wear them all weekend long, especially on the holiday Monday, where King County is going to have a rally and march that starts at noon at Garfield High School. So keep that button and wear it with pride. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the Reverend Aaron Williams, Senior Pastor at Mount Zion Baptist Church, who will begin with an invocation and then will lead us in the song, Lift Every Voice. It is the first verse and it is printed in your bulletin. Pastor Williams.
Dr. King once said that all men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever is done directly affects all indirectly. And if that is the case, then I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. Dr. King taught us that we all have a right to dream. He dreamed of a beloved community where all of the roadblocks would be removed so that everyone could dream and pursue their dreams, and those dreams become a reality. And having said that, I want to welcome you here to Mount Zion Baptist Church. We are delighted to have you here, and we're delighted to partner once again with Seattle Community Colleges and to be here and to fellowship with each and every one of you. And I want to say a hearty welcome to each and every one of you. I want to welcome our distinguished guests, friends, and visitors. We're delighted to have you with us here today to pursue the dream once again and to make that dream and put it into the forefronts of our minds, because it's all about making that dream a reality. So we thank you once again for being here. At this time, I'm going to ask that you stand and we're going to sing Lift Every Voice.
Hey!
are talking about victory, and if we are talking about quality of life in Seattle, there are so many reasons that we rank as one of the best places in the country in which to live. And near the top of that list is Seattle Community Colleges. This is widely known as the flagship community college district in our state, but we probably know them best as the campuses in the neighborhoods where we live, where we work and play. The colleges are recognized across the country as leaders and innovators. President Obama has called them out many, many times in the last 2 years. It is my pleasure now to introduce the Chancellor of the great Seattle Community Colleges, Seattle Central, North Seattle, and South Seattle, and Seattle Vocational Institute. Please welcome Dr. Jill Wakefield.
Thank you, Lori, and I have to tell you, I feel very honored, but a little chagrined to know that I've been at 35 of the last 37 as an employee. You know, I think I'm going to be here till we get it done. And Lori, I think we would find your name on the best of Seattle list too. Lori set her sights on journalism when she was a teenager in Hawaii, and judging by her awards, top assignments, and professional contributions, she absolutely made the right choice. She comes from a family of educators. She's a teacher at heart. One of her honors is Lifetime Achievement Award from the Asian American Journalists Association for mentoring aspiring journalists. King TV and our community are fortunate to have you, and we thank you for sharing your many talents with us today. Thank you, Lori, also for introducing our colleges. Every year, more than 52,000 students come through our doors, and our faculty and staff work with each one of them on their way to a better life. When we look at the numbers, we find that 1 in every 7 households in Seattle has a connection with the Seattle Community Colleges. This event is important to us because it represents commitment to our students and to our community. Half of our student body are students of color, making Seattle Community Colleges the most diverse in the state. Students choose our colleges because of the high quality, but also because we are the pathway to higher education, baccalaureate degrees, great jobs and careers. This is especially important during these troubling times when education and training are critical to economic recovery. You may be interested to know that we send more students and more students of color to the University of Washington than any other community college. And those students do as well or better than students who start at the U as freshmen. Well, we can ask for no better advocates for our students than our Board of Trustees. These outstanding community leaders are seated here today, and I would like to introduce them. First, Dr. Constance Rice, our board chair. Gayatri S.E., vice chair. Board member Tom Malone, the dean of board members. And our newest trustee, Albert Shin. Trustee Jorge Carrasco is unable to be with us today. Well, I would also like to introduce our brand new presidents. I think each of our new presidents has served somewhere about 6 or 7 months. They're seated in the front row, and these gentlemen are all doing an outstanding job leading the colleges in our district. I'd like to start with Mark Mitsui, president of North Seattle Community College. Gary Oitley, president of South Seattle Community College. Paul Kilpatrick, president of Seattle Central Community College. And Al Griswold, interim executive dean at Seattle Vocational Institute. Now it is my great pleasure to bring Trustee Rice to the podium for the Mckinney Scholar Award.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Wakefield, for your great leadership And I want to say that we have among our many traditions of this program is the announcement of the Mckinney Scholar Award, which we present each year to deserving students at the Seattle Community Colleges. The scholarship was established in 1998 to honor the many years that the Reverend Dr. Samuel Barry Mckinney served as pastor of Mount Zion Baptist Church. It is a wonderful way to start the new year. To date, we have celebrated 13 scholars with many different life stories and futures and excellent life experiences. The scholarships rotates among the 3 Seattle community colleges and is funded by the college foundations. In 2011, we welcome a student from Seattle Central Community College to the distinguished group of Mckinney Scholar alumni. Please welcome Mount Zion Pastor Emeritus, the Reverend Samuel Barry Mckinney, and Dr. Paul Kilpatrick, President of Seattle Central Community College, and Samuel Wells, our 2011 scholar.
Samuel Wells, and you have a good first name, which means asked of God. So there are great things for you in your future, and we're happy to present you with this scholarship, that you will use it well, and that many will be blessed and benefited by your efforts. God bless you, and thank you very much.
But as you all know, for the price of the fame, you must also endure a brief tribute to Mr. Wells. Samuel is an outstanding example of the saying that persistence is the greatest indicator of success. Mr. Wells grew up in foster homes. He left Garfield High before graduating, and then he earned his GED 2 years later. He started at Seattle Central in 1995. He left after a quarter, and after some difficult life experiences, he returned 2 years ago to complete his degree in social and human services. In addition to his academic studies at Central, Samuel is enrolled in the College Success Program, which supports foster youth who are new to higher education. He takes part in a community outreach program for those who participate in risky behaviors, and also has a part-time job as a peer specialist at Sound Mental Health. Now, with grown children of his own, Mr. Wells plans to complete his associate degree this spring, and then to enroll in the baccalaureate program in applied behavioral sciences at Seattle Central. His ultimate goal is to attain a master's degree so he is able to assist others who find themselves in difficult places. It's been my pleasure to meet with Samuel and just have a one-on-one conversation. He was also invited to our foundation board retreat just to hear the perspective from students on how much foundations mean to their education. I was very impressed with Sam. He's very genuine, he's very caring. He exemplifies the quotation that I often use when I talk to students. This is a tribute to Robert Strauss. The quotation is, "Success is like wrestling a gorilla. You don't quit when you're tired, you quit when the gorilla is tired." A lot of our students have a lot of gorillas that they need to wrestle. And the more gorillas they wrestle, the stronger they become. And the stronger gorillas that they can wrestle, the more goals they're going to achieve. So again, congratulations, Mr. Wells. You're going to be an exemplary role model for other people. You're already strong as a result of the gorillas that you've wrestled before, but you'll be wrestling bigger gorillas, and you will defeat them as well. Congratulations.
Congratulations to Samuel Wells. Well, it's always a pleasure to see the many elected leaders in the audience who join us every year. From Washington, D.C., U.S. Senator Patty Murray is represented by Sergio Cuerva, a graduate of Seattle Central Community College and Seattle University. Thank you for coming, Sergio. And we also have representatives from the office of Congressman Jim McDermott, if you could give a wave. I'm going to ask everyone to wave. Very excellent. And 1st District Congressman Jay Inslee is with us today. We welcome him to the celebration and to the microphone for a brief word. Jay, a brief word. Please. The congressman is used to me scolding him all the time.
I think there was a message there somewhere in that comment. I just want to say this. Martin Luther King is a myth to many, but he was a person to me. And I remember the night when we lost him, sitting with my dad, he was a teacher at Garfield High School, talking about what this meant to the nation. And even then, I was only 18. But there was something he said that means a lot to me today. And if you come stand on the star that is on the Capitol, on the Lincoln Memorial steps, you'll feel the hair coming up back on your neck, thinking about, I have a dream speech. But I just want to say what he meant, which is much more than a dream. He said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends to justice. It's long, but it always bends to justice. But the comment I want to make about him is that he recognized, and I hope we will recognize, it only bends to justice because men and women act rather than just dream. He was not just a dreamer. He was an actor. And we are learning from his history today. And if you'll look at your program on page 3, there's a picture of Martin Luther King, and to his left is a gentleman you just see half of his face. That's John Lewis, who today is a congressman from Georgia, and he is the moral universe and conscience of the U.S. Congress. This Wednesday, Congressman John Lewis will vote to preserve the justice to make sure every American has access to health care. We are acting, not just dreaming. Thank you for the lessons of Martin Luther King. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Congressman Inslee, and we appreciate your hard work as well. It's been a long tradition to have the King County Executive with us every year, and we are blessed to have Dale Constantine join us. Last year, we learned that he and his family have personal ties with our community colleges. Please welcome King County Executive Dale Constantine.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, my father taught most of his career at Seattle Central, then Seattle Community College, and then retired from the North Campus. And today I'm reminded of how critical it is for us, our community, our legislature, to support education, K-12, community colleges, four-year universities, as we seek to equip every young person in our community, and some of us not so young, with the skills to take advantage of the economic recovery in our emerging economic sectors. That commitment, that fundamental commitment, is one that we absolutely have to keep if we're going to live out the ideals that Dr. King articulated for us. It's a great honor to be here today to recognize Dr. King's contributions. He was still a young man, Jay was mentioning, when he died. I was in elementary school, and my mom came home that day on April 4th, and she asked me, and I think I may have told this story last year, which of these names, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., were given to him by his parents, and which of them did he earn in his life? And of course, I thought about it for a moment, and then I asked which of those he earned. I said, King? Which was not correct, but it was a very good guess. Despite his remarkable accomplishments, his life's work was and remains today unfinished. Dr. King left us all a challenge to work for fairness, for freedom, for justice, to live up to our country's stated ideals like liberty and justice for all, and the notion that we are all created equal. Today's event also pays tribute to the civil rights movement, specifically of the 1950s and 1960s, and we honor the many people of conscience who fought and suffered and sacrificed to make our country greater. For they, just as they were not satisfied with America as it was, we must not be satisfied with America as it is. Better is not good enough. Disparities continue to this day in employment, in education, in opportunity. In King County government, we have created an equity and social justice initiative to ensure that we consider equity and social justice in every decision we make, and I am proud of the support our county employees are lending to this important work. I pledge to continue it through my service as the executive of King County, of Martin Luther King County. Now, as you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is the only U.S. holiday officially designated as a day of service, and it is fitting that we take one day a year to honor Dr. King with not just words, but action. By volunteering in our communities, on this day of service, we pay tribute to Dr. King and to those who joined on the front lines of the civil rights movement. So thank you for being here today. The presence of so many people, and especially young people, shows that our regard for Dr. King and his ideals grows with the years. Thank you for your efforts to continue his work, to make America what it is meant to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Executive Constantine. We also have greetings sent to us by Mayor Mike McGinn and Governor Gregoire. If their representatives could give us a wave. Thank you for joining us here today. And we would like to also have the following people give us a wave or maybe stand as we go through them. We would like to thank these people for joining us today. From Olympia, representatives from the State Commission on African American Affairs. We are also joined by most of the members of the Seattle City Council. Thank you for joining us. Raise your hands. There we go. Several members of the Port Commission, Seattle Port Commission, and the King County Council. Thank you. Also, members of the Police Department command staff and public safety officers from the City of Seattle. Thank you. Our city firefighters, senior staff, and members of the Seattle Black Firefighters Association. Members of the King County Sheriff's Command Staff, and representatives from the Western Washington chapter of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Also, leaders, faculty, and students from 2-year and 4-year colleges, including the University of Washington at Seattle and Bothell, Cascadia College, Shoreline Community College, and many other schools. Thank you. Also, leadership from Seattle Public Schools. Thank you for that. And members of the Seattle Community Colleges Foundations. Thank you very much. Also, leaders of our region's outstanding community, business, and labor organizations. We appreciate your presence here. Today's program is being recorded by Seattle Community College's television station. You will be able to see a repeat of this program again in February during Black History Month. You can see it on Comcast Channel 28 and on Broad Stripe Channel 19. Now, I know a lot of you are waiting to hear again from the Black Nativity Singers. I am too. Their music will set the stage for a dramatic presentation about the struggle for civil rights in this country half a century ago. As Chancellor Wakefield said earlier, Seattle's diversity helps us to be strong and dynamic. What we take for granted today wasn't always the case. Yesterday, I was interviewing a community member. His name is Gregory Johnson. He attended Garfield High School, class of '68, and he said it wasn't unusual back then for the central area schools to get the old books and the schools in the north end to get all the new textbooks. So things have changed. Things have changed a lot. We also are taking this opportunity to learn, and that's why I'm so glad to see all of the young students here today. Take it in, learn from what you're about to see. Our keynote presentation will take us back to an era in a special presentation by the Living Voices Theater Company. You will see news coverage from that time and hear actor Marcel Davis. Ladies and gentlemen, Living Voices Theater.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Marcel Davis. I'm with Living Voices Theater Company out of Seattle, Washington, and I'm truly honored today to be here to present The Right to Dream. The Right to Dream is a story in which I will actually become the character of Raymond Hollis, who was a young boy coming of age in Mississippi during the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 60s. Now, Raymond Hollis is not a real person. He's what we call a composite character. So you're not going to be able to do any research or go to the internet or go to the library and find out any more information about Raymond Hollis, but all the stories, all the events that you will see and hear actually happened in real life. I'm sure that many of you are well aware of some of the well-known leaders of the Civil Rights Movement, people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Dr. Mckinney himself. However, there were many, thousands of unknown leaders of the Civil Rights Movement as well. And without their contributions and without their sacrifices, the movement would never ever have survived. We're talking about average, ordinary people, just like Raymond Hollis. After several years of living in discrimination, living in a system of legalized segregation and oppression that caused many to live in constant fear on a daily basis, there were hundreds of thousands of high school and college-age students who began to form organizations whose main mission was to put an end to segregation in America. A few of the organizations that you will see and hear about today are the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. There's also the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, an organization that Dr. King himself was a founder of, and also the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples. Members of these and other organizations staged sit-ins, boycotts, freedom rides, protests, and marches as ways of non-violently fighting for their equal rights and justice. Without further ado, please sit back and experience the life of Raymond Hollis and the right to dream. In Mississippi, we hardly have the time to sleep, much less dream. Now, they told us we couldn't sing We Shall Overcome. It was too provocative. But after Reverend King finished, all the snakes started singing that song. It was our one brief moment of defiance, of standing up for ourselves and what we were there for, not what anyone else wanted us to be. We shall. 2 weeks later, the 16th Street Church in Birmingham was bombed. Tony was there with SCLC. Sunday morning, and 4 little girls saying their prayers are killed. Tony.
It's when you didn't see this tonight. I can't say I'm sorry to see it.
I became the SNCC campus recruiter with a girl named Ann who'd been working out in the country.
I would stay, but it just got too dangerous. The Klan almost lynched the guy there before me.
What happened to it?
He had a nervous breakdown.
Bob Moses was planning a freedom election where Negroes could vote for their own candidates. We went to Negro Day at the State Fair to distribute leaflets about the vote. We went door to door. We were walking and talking until we were collapsing in the streets.
Dear Reverend, some of those freedom workers came to town, but the Klan drove them out. You've got to stop. You're playing with fire.
There were so many cops following us. People would just about run the other way when you approached. I hoped all the walking and talking hadn't been for nothing.
Have you heard the final results? We got 80,000 voters.
80,000 is good when you figure there are only 20,000 actually registered. But did you know the real number of voting age blacks in Mississippi is over 400,000?
Maybe next time we see your name on the ballot, Mr. President.
Maybe. But I'm going to need a lot more registered voters.
We're going to get them ready.
I was exhausted. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept through the night or had a decent meal. But the movement had to keep going. During the election, about 100 white Northern college students had taken off from school to volunteer. Now Bob Moses wanted 1,000 of them to come down for the summer to help with voter registration. Freedom Summer.
A bunch of white folks taking over our jobs for summer vacation. We can do this without them.
Come on, think about it. The black people are being killed here every day and nobody blinks. Bring 1,000 white kids into that kind of danger and this country will sit up and listen.
We're in a war here. This is survival.
Has word got out about Freedom Summer? Bombs exploded our offices, fires destroyed our churches, and the number of dead bodies grew. In the summer, 2 volunteers arrived. 2 weeks later, 2 victims disappeared. 2 white and 1 black. Their car was found empty and badly burned. Officially, they were missing, but we all knew the truth.
They haven't come back, and we haven't heard from them. Those kids are dead.
The FBI searched for 6 weeks. And all that while, the violence continued. The FBI searched while we lived in terror day by day, wondering if someone would firebomb the place where you were staying.
Make sure your tires are in good condition and your gas tank full, because at night you don't want to stop for anyone or anything.
Make sure you check your car before you get in, because it might have been dynamited.
Never go anywhere without making sure someone knows when to expect you to return.
Most of all, never show them your fear.
We didn't tell them no lies. We prepared them for exactly what it was like. And it was like going into combat.
Finally, the missing bodies were discovered. Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman had been buried by a bulldozer.
I'm sick and tired of going to funerals of black men murdered by white men.
Somehow, I made it to my college graduation. I invited my family to come, but my letter was returned unopened. I couldn't tell if Mama had done it or if it had never made it past the post office. Tony was the only member of my family to see me get my diploma.
You made it through, cousin. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, what am I gonna do now?
We're getting you out of Mississippi, boy.
The voter registration drive had started in Alabama. On the first day, we marched 300 people to the courthouse. We marched every day for 2 weeks straight. We even brought down Malcolm X to speak at a rally. A lot of young people in the South were starting to pay more attention to Malcolm's ideas, including us and SNCC.
We talk about nonviolence and they pull out the shotguns. What else are we supposed to do?
I hated to admit it was true. We had turned the other cheek too many times, with too little to show for it. Like the March on Washington, playing by the white man's rules was only going to get us so far. We needed our own rules. We needed to take pride in ourselves, black pride. We needed strength, we needed power. Malcolm had it, he gave us hope again. A few weeks later, he was killed up in Harlem.
Harlem has come to bid farewell to one of its brightest hopes, extinguished now and gone from us forever.
There's no time to mourn death during war. In Alabama, we kept marching. One night, the state troopers came in, shut off the streetlights so no one could see, and beat people at random. That was the night Jimmy Lee Jackson got shot. They were beating his mother. When he went to protect her, they shot him. A few days later, he was dead.
SCLC is planning to march from Selma to Montgomery. Will you go with me?
You bet I will. Jimmy Lee's murder was what inspired the idea for the march. Some people even wanted to carry his body with us. It was a beautiful spring sunny in Alabama when we started across the bridge. Ain't gonna let nobody. People were singing, turn me around, turn me.
Not be allowed to continue.
The singing stopped.
You have 3 minutes to disperse.
Everyone knelt. All together, almost automatically knelt to pray. Our Father, which art in heaven. Suddenly there's tear gas everywhere. Choking fuel. Police on horseback with nightsticks and cattle prods. There are women, children, old people. Everyone running, everyone a target. Tony is cut on the head. His head splits wide open. So much blood.
Does he need a doctor?
Yes, please help us.
We don't have doctors for people like you.
They whip and chase us all the way back to the church with bricks and bottles and shotguns. The police ride their horses running to the church steps. Oh, God.
Now you see what you caused?
How did I do this, Sheriff?
If y'all stayed in Mississippi at this, wouldn't be happy.
He's holding me so I have to look. Blood and bodies lying out everywhere. People running over each other. Tony! Tony!
But I really blow your brains out.
Pushes the barrel of his gun against my head. He cocks the hammer. There are people dying all around me, and I will be just one more. Why doesn't he kill me? Get it over with. He lets me go.
Dear Ray, I'm sorry you can't come see Tony in the hospital. It's just not safe.
I still know how I survived Bloody Sunday. It took us 2 more weeks to get across that bridge and into Montgomery. I felt lost without Tony.
Could you march with me instead?
Daddy, what are you doing here?
I believe in what you're doing, son. I'm here to join you.
30,000 blacks and whites gathered for a rally that almost beat the March on Washington. I stood beside my father and listened to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. When my father returned home, the Klan was waiting for him. His body washed up in the river the next day. But my father did not die a broken man. He died with pride, and he'd be proud today too.
I myself desegregated America, not some big powerful man, but me.
The lock on the ballot box has been broken. Instead of handfuls, we're going to have hundreds and thousands of black folk marching in to vote today. And my name is on the ballot.
I walked the picket line, and I sat in the walls of segregation toppled.
I'm running this race not just for me, but for my father, Tony, Michael, and my Uncle Cliff, my mother and sisters, for everyone who has died for this movement, so that others may live freely, and for those who are left to live and keep fighting. I made a vow a long time ago that I would not keep silent. I would speak for my people, and I'm keeping that promise whether I win or lose. This is my beginning. I do not intend to quit. I refuse to die.
Nothing can stop us now.
It is time for things to change in this world. I'm going to do everything I can. What will you do? Just experienced briefly. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. And we have some young people who have some questions that they would like to ask you.
Thank you.
Okay, you are from John Stanford School, International School. Can you tell me your name?
Jamie.
And what grade are you in?
5th.
What is your question for Marcel?
What inspired you to do this play?
Good question. What inspired me to do this play? As an actor, for me, it's so much more than just performance for performance sake. With Living Voices, they provide the opportunity for us to be educators as well. So being able to continue to share history, with the future generations, and connect with generations that lived through that experience is what inspired me to do this. It's an opportunity not to just perform, but also to educate and share part of our history. Good question.
Your name and grade?
My name is Chio, and I'm in 5th grade. My question is there anything that you learned that you didn't know before?
Very good question. I did, and continue to do a lot of research. One of the things that I didn't know that I learn now is how hard it was. What made it so hard for people to achieve their equal rights was because you had people at the highest levels of authority at the federal government, in fact, who were sometimes members of the KKK and would enforce all of the segregation laws. I don't know how many people have ever heard of Cointelpro, which stood for the Cover Intelligence Project, which was a program that was administered under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI. And it stood for eliminating any black nationalist organization. And I did not know that it was at the highest levels of authority that kept people from getting their equal rights and justice. Great question.
Thank you for those questions. We have a couple more questions. Thank you very much. these are students from Franklin High School, correct? Okay. Woot. Okay, your name and grade.
My name is Ryan Polito, and I'm in 10th grade. My question is, how did Raymond get connected with the students of the SNCC without technologies we had today, like Facebook or cell phones?
Very, very good question. And it goes back to the tried and true method of word of mouth is the best form of sharing information, being able to establish human contact. They just talk to each other. And a lot of times it was the church that held, the gathering space for some of the private meetings. Because if it was known that you were involved in the movement, you ran the risk of, being oppressed. So they had to meet privately and sometimes in churches, but it was just through word of mouth, just sharing human contact and talking to people. What was the technology back then?
Okay.
Good question.
Name and grade.
I'm Josh Iverson, and I'm in 10th grade as well. And my question is, how did Raymond have the courage to keep fighting when there was so much violence against the movement?
How did Raymond have the courage to keep fighting? And that question, I usually perform in front of primarily high school and middle school students, and I always inform them of how much power they have of youth. If you look at the civil rights movement, the average age of the civil rights worker was about 15 years old. And in fact, when you study history, most significant movements that have been made by young people. The courage came from that rebellious spirit of the young people, realizing that they were not going to be exposed to this way of life for a long period of time as the older generation. You remember Raymond's mother was like, you've got to stop. The older generation had families, they had jobs. The younger generation refused to live that way. So to rebel is not always a bad thing. It means that you simply are against something, and they were against living like that for the rest of their lives. And I think the courage came from, again, the spirit that you as young people have today to really have power and affect change in the world.
Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your answers and your performance. We appreciate the message, the teaching that Marcel has brought for us today. And the thing that I think moves us in particular, and I saw some tears because it's difficult to see some of this, but we are very proud that the history has moved forward, that there was action in a positive direction, and we in Seattle are very fortunate to have among us people who have lived that history. And none other than the Reverend Samuel Barry Mckinney is here, who has lived through some of what has happened. And we would like to invite him up here right now to talk a little bit about his recollections of the movement. And at the end, he's going to lead us in song, and I want everyone to participate. Reverend Mckinney.
Thank you. As one gets older, we're supposed to calm down and be nice and placid and long for the good old days. They were old, but not so good. And thank God we have lived through them. Seeing the recollection of what took place brought to mind quite a few memories, many of them not too good, and as we look at what's going on right now, we can't sweep under the rug what has happened because there's some connectivity taking place. Well, I just have to be myself. Thank you. What's going on right now, Dr. King would not be pleased with, neither should we. First of all, there's been an effort to change what Dr. King said and represented and stood for. We now hear about Dr. King's message was he wanted a colorblind America. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I look at this audience, we're not one color, we have many colors. And God made us that way. And we ought to be proud of it. Not a colorblind society, but we've had a society blinded by color. And that has to change. What took place in Arizona is not to be forgotten or overlooked or swept again under the rug. I had seen chain gangs, I had seen much that took place in the South, but it was in the state of Arizona where I first saw a hand-painted sign which said no, a 6-letter word begins with N and ends with R. Mexicans are dogs allowed in Arizona. Where did Arizona come from? It came from Mexico. Where did Texas come from? California. I know I'm right about it. And now people want their country back. We want our White House back. Who built the White House? Black folks, slaves. Against their will, they painted it white. But don't forget the hands and the blood that made it. Reverend, you're old now, you shouldn't be so angry. I'm not angry. I'm just telling it like it is. And you won't be free. And Dr. King hit the nail on his head. I won't be long. He said, we better learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we'll all perish as fools. End of quotation. We have overcome quite a bit, and there's much more we shall overcome. We overcame the dogs, the water hoses, but we still have a long way to go. And let me say this to my black brothers and sisters. I forget who said this, but he who would be free himself must strike the blow. You can't wait for the Congress. You can't wait for anybody else to shake the chains off of you that are holding you down. When we look at the fact that in the state of Washington, African Americans compose 4%, but close to 40% of people who are incarcerated. There's something wrong about that picture. We shall overcome that too. We have more black men in prison than we have in 4-year colleges and 2-year colleges. We shall overcome that. We have people on the low end of the scale. We shall overcome that. We have a black man in the White House, and he's there because he deserves to be there. And we shall overcome the hate and the bigotry, and thank God for his message the other evening. We shall overcome. Maybe not when we want to, which is now, but we shall overcome. The moment each one of us says, I'm tired of these chains, I'm tired of this mess, I'm going to get up and be what God wants me to be, that's when we overcome. When we shake off the chains of oppression and pick up that staff of justice and righteousness, that's when we move forward. Thank God for Dr. King, and thank God for this presentation, which reminded us where we have been and where we have come from. We fought here in Seattle to make justice a reality for everyone. At the time of Dr. King, we were fighting on 2 fronts: to support those who were struggling in the South, and to awaken those of us in the North who thought that we had it made because we were in Seattle. Only to discover that if you are black and south of the Canadian border, that's South. My parents were born in the South, mother in Alabama, father in Georgia. I was born up south in Michigan because they were part of that first migration. Now we're in Seattle, that is out south. But Southern attitudes still prevail, and we must learn how to shake them off. When the young people stood up and said, we are tired, we're moving forward, that made a difference. I know I'm in church, I know that there are many faiths here, but the one I'm a part of lets us know that God so loved the world that a child had to come into the world, and a little child shall lead them and grow up and make a difference. We shall overcome. We're going to stand and sing this together. And we shall be on our way, and thank you.
It is in your program if you're looking for the lyrics. Lead us, Rev.
Somebody hit the right key.
Your key?
Your key, yeah.
My key? Your key.
Yours is all right.
We shall overcome. We shall
Join hands. Reach across the aisle. Today, we shall all be free.
We shall all be free.
We shall all be free.
We shall
All be free. Today. We shall walk hand in hand. We shall walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand. We